My entitled boss ordered me to work on my wedding day because careers matter more than love. When I refused, he publicly fired me in front of my guests and announced, "Let's see if your husband wants an unemployed wife." I smirked, picked up the mic, and said, "Actually, I just bought this company." His jaw dropped. I worked for a tech startup in San Francisco. The kind that loves to call itself a family while treating employees like trash. The CEO, Greg, was the worst. He was the kind of boss who thought long hours meant loyalty and that the more miserable you were, the more dedicated you must be. If you weren't answering emails at midnight, he'd call you out in meetings. If you left at 5 p.m., he'd make a joke about you, taking a half day. He once made someone cancel their honeymoon to work on a last-minute project. He thought it was funny. I had been working there for 3 years. Started as a lead developer, worked my way up to director of product. I was good at my job. Too good. Greg saw that and used it to his advantage. The company was growing and investors were happy, but behind the scenes, it was a mess. High turnover. Terrible management. No real direction. The only reason things ran at all was because of a handful of us holding it together. I should have left earlier. I had offers. Other companies had tried to poach me, but I stayed. It was a mix of loyalty, pride, and the fact that I had put so much work into the company that I wanted to see it succeed. Then came my wedding. I told Greg about my wedding a year in advance. Not a week. Not a month. A whole year. At first, he acted supportive. "Of course. Take time off. You deserve it." He was lying. A week before my wedding, he called me into his office. "Greg, we need you here next Saturday." Me, "I'm getting married next Saturday." Greg, "And?" I laughed. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "Greg, this is your career. Careers last forever. Marriages, not so much." I felt like I had been slapped. He went on about how dedicated employees put work first, how anyone could get married, but not everyone could build a company. "Greg, you're one of the most valuable people here. But if you walk away from a major client presentation for something as trivial as a wedding, it sends the wrong message." Trivial. I kept it together. Me, "I gave you a year's notice. I trained my team. They can handle it." Greg smirked. "Greg, if you miss this, don't bother coming back." I stared at him. Me, "Are you firing me?" Greg, "I'm giving you a choice." I chose. Me, "Then I won't be back." And just like that, I was fired over Slack. No severance. No transition plan. Just a public message to the company. "My name has chosen to leave us. Wishing her the best." Like I had resigned. I didn't tell most people what happened. I didn't want to think about work. I wanted to enjoy my wedding. Nick, my fiancé, was furious. My parents were livid. My friends told me to blast Greg on social media, but I didn't want drama. I just wanted a perfect day. We booked a beautiful venue in Napa Valley. 200 guests. Friends and family flew in. Everything was exactly how I imagined. Then, during the reception, right before we were about to cut the cake, someone tapped my shoulder. "Friend, Greg is here." I turned, and there he was, standing by the mic smirking. I felt my stomach drop. Greg grabbed the microphone and tapped it twice. The room went quiet. "Greg, ladies and gentlemen, a toast." I froze. "Greg, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the bride. She's an incredible worker. Dedicated. Hardworking. The kind of person who could have had an amazing career." People laughed politely, thinking it was a normal speech. But then Greg smiled, that smug, arrogant smile. "Greg, it's just too bad she chose to throw it all away for this." Dead silence. People started whispering. Nick stood up. Greg raised a hand to stop him. "Greg, I mean, really." Walking away from a six-figure salary, stock options, a leadership role, all for what? A wedding? Let's hope her husband doesn't mind having an unemployed wife. I felt my hands shaking. Greg laughed. "Greg, anyway, let's give it up for the bride. May she enjoy unemployment." People were staring at me, waiting to see what I'd do. Nick looked ready to punch Greg in the face. But I smiled. I took the microphone from Greg's hand. And I said 7 words that changed everything. Me, actually, Greg, I just bought the company. For the first time ever, Greg was speechless. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The room was dead quiet. Then, someone laughed. It started as a low chuckle, then more people joined in. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. The kind that burns. Nick leaned in, smirking. "Nick, dude, you just got fired at someone else's wedding. That's gotta be a new low." The laughter exploded. Greg turned red. He looked around like he was waiting for someone to defend him, but no one did. I could see it in his eyes panic. He cleared his throat. "Greg, that's impossible. I turned to my maid of honor, Jenna, who was already pulling out her phone. She tapped a few times, then held up the screen. Jenna, confirmed. SEC filings went through this morning. She's the new majority owner. I took the mic again. Me. So, Greg, since you love hustle culture so much, how about this? I'll see you in the office Monday morning. He stormed out. I walked into my new company at exactly 8 a.m. The entire office was buzzing. Word had spread fast. People cheered when I stepped in. Some even clapped. Apparently, someone had filmed the wedding moment, and it had gone viral. The title? CEO crashes wedding to humiliate ex-employee. Gets fired instead. Millions of views. I walked to my new office, the one that used to belong to Greg. And there he was, sitting at his desk. Feet up, like nothing had changed. He didn't even look up. Greg, cute stunt. But you don't belong here. I folded my arms. Me, you don't either. Pack your things. He laughed. Like he actually thought I was joking. Greg, you don't know how this works. Sure, you have controlling shares. But I still have my contract. And guess what? You can't just fire me. Then he grinned. Greg, unless you want to pay me $10 million. I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. Greg had one of those bulletproof CEO contracts, the kind that guaranteed a huge severance package if he was ever fired without cause. $10 million. And the worst part? If I fired him for no reason, that money would come out of the company's pocket. My company. Greg leaned back in his chair, smug as ever. Greg, go ahead. Fire me. I'll be retired by lunch. I clenched my jaw. I had just one, and now I was staring at a choice: fire him and bleed the company dry. Keep him and watch him sabotage me from the inside. Either way, he thought he had me cornered. He was wrong. I just had to figure out how to break him first. If I couldn't fire Greg, I could make him quit. And I knew exactly how. Greg lived for power. For control. For being the boss. So I took it all away. First, I demoted him. Me, Greg, congratulations. You're the new director of special projects. Greg, that's not a real position. Me, it is now. You report to Jenna. His face twitched. Jenna, my best friend? The one he always dismissed in meetings? Yeah, she was his new boss. Jenna, looking forward to working with you, Greg. I'll send over a list of training modules. Greg looked like he was about to punch a wall. I walked him out of his old office. Me, this space is too big for your new role. You'll be moving downstairs. Downstairs. To the tiny, windowless office next to the break room. Greg, this is a joke. Me, oh, I don't joke about company resources. We have to optimize, right? For the next 2 weeks, Greg's inbox flooded with pointless assignments. Mandatory HR training. Corporate culture workshops. PowerPoint presentations on team synergy. He had back-to-back meetings with interns. He had to file reports no one read. And every time he tried to do something important, Jenna would send him another useless task. Jenna, Greg, I need a 20-page analysis on the history of corporate lunch breaks. Greg, this is a joke. Jenna, and I'll need it in Comic Sans. He was boiling. But he couldn't quit. If he left voluntarily, he wouldn't get his $10 million payout. So he had to sit there and take it. And I was just getting started. 2 weeks in, Greg snapped. I was in a meeting when Jenna burst in. Jenna, you need to see this. I followed her downstairs. Greg's tiny break room office? Destroyed. Papers everywhere. Chair overturned. And Greg? Sitting at his desk, gripping his head, muttering to himself. The sight of him broke me. Not out of pity. Out of satisfaction. Me, Greg, you look stressed. Should we schedule you for an employee wellness seminar? His eye twitched. Greg, you think you've won. I smiled. Me, I know I have. Greg was crumbling. But I needed to push him over the edge. I needed one more move. And when it happened, it would be game over. I just had to wait. I thought Greg was at his limit. I thought it was only a matter of days before he cracked completely and walked out. I was wrong. Because Greg wasn't just arrogant, he was desperate. And desperate men do stupid things. 2 days after I saw Greg muttering to himself in his sad little break room office, Jenna barged into my office again. Jenna, Greg's suing you. I nearly choked on my coffee. Me, for what? She tossed a stack of legal papers onto my desk. Jenna, wrongful termination. Hostile work environment. Retaliation. I laughed. Greg wasn't even fired. He was still collecting a paycheck. A 6-figure paycheck for doing absolutely nothing. I flipped through the lawsuit. Me, he actually filed this? Jenna, he did. Then I saw the number. He was suing me for $20 million. I slammed the papers down. Me, he's bluffing. Jenna, maybe. But you're still going to have to fight it. Greg thought he could pressure me into cutting a deal. He thought I'd rather pay him off than drag this through court. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't afraid of a fight. A week into the lawsuit, Greg made his next move. He went straight to the board of directors. Now, most of the board members were on my side. They were the ones who approved my takeover in the first place. But Greg was good at one thing, manipulating people. He started playing the victim. Greg, I built this company from the ground up, and now I'm being pushed out. Greg, I'm being treated unfairly. I don't even have a real role anymore. Greg, this is personal. She's not running a business. She's out for revenge. It worked on some of them. 2 board members, rich old dudes who had been Greg's golfing buddies for years, started raising concerns. One of them, Mitchell, called me in for a talk. I sat across from him in a glass conference room, arms crossed. Mitchell, look, we all understand why you don't like Greg. But this isn't about personal vendettas. It's about what's best for the company. I already knew where this was going. Mitchell, maybe it's time to settle. Pay Greg out, let him walk away clean and move forward. I leaned back in my chair. Me, Mitchell, did Greg tell you about his contract? Mitchell, what about it? Me, did he tell you that if he leaves voluntarily, he gets nothing? Mitchell blinked. I smirked. Me, Greg doesn't want what's best for the company. He just wants a payout. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. Mitchell, still, dragging this out in court, me, won't cost the company a dime. The lawsuit is against me personally. Mitchell shut up real fast. Me, so unless you're willing to write Greg a personal check for $10 million, I suggest you let me handle this. Silence. Mitchell sighed. Mitchell, just, don't let this turn into a circus. I was ready for Greg to keep pushing. What I wasn't ready for was how far he was willing to go. One night, Jenna called me at 11 p.m. Jenna, check your email. Now. I pulled up my inbox and felt my stomach drop. It was a leaked document. An internal report, one that I hadn't approved, that made it look like the company was failing under my leadership. It listed fake financial losses, low employee morale, and even potential layoffs. The subject line? Internal report, the downfall of my name's leadership, and the worst part? It had already been sent to investors. Me? Where the hell did this come from? Jenna. Greg. He's got someone on the inside. I knew it was Greg. But I needed to know who helped him. Because whoever did was about to regret it. I called an emergency meeting at 7 a.m. I pulled in every executive, every department head, every manager. Greg wasn't invited. I slammed the report down on the conference table. Me, this was sent to investors last night. It's fake. Someone inside this company helped Greg do it. Silence. People shifted uncomfortably. I let it sit. I wanted them to sweat. Me, so here's how this is going to go. I'm giving the person responsible one chance to come forward. I folded my arms. Me, if I find out another way, I won't just fire you. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I wasn't bluffing. The room stayed dead silent. Then, slowly, a hand went up. It was Paul, our chief operating officer. Paul, Greg reached out a week ago. He told me if I helped him, he could get me a higher position. I laughed. Me, so you thought Greg, the guy who's being run out of his own company, could help you? Paul looked down. Paul, I made a mistake. Me, you sure did. Paul was gone by the end of the day. And Greg? I made sure he knew exactly what happened. I forwarded him an email. No message. No subject. Just one attachment. Paul's termination letter. Greg was running out of moves. His lawsuit? Stalling. His allies? Turning on him. His inside man? Gone. He was losing. But Greg had one last trick up his sleeve. And when he played it, I realized just how far he was willing to go. Greg was losing. His lawsuit was a joke. His allies had abandoned him. His inside man had been exposed and fired. But Greg wasn't the type to go quietly. That's when he made his last move, and it was his most dangerous one yet. 3 days after I fired Paul, Jenna stormed into my office red-faced and shaking. Jenna, you need to see this. She slammed her laptop onto my desk and hit play. It was a video. I watched in horror as a deepfake version of me sat at a desk, speaking in my voice, saying things I had never said. Fake me, I don't care about employees. I'll cut whoever I have to. Fake me, this company is just a stepping stone. I'm cashing out in a year, then I'm gone. Fake me, people are replaceable. Profits aren't. I felt sick. The deepfake was scarily good, not perfect, but close enough that if someone wasn't looking for flaws, they'd believe it. And people were already believing it. The video had been posted anonymously and was spreading like wildfire. Employees were sharing it. Investors were asking questions. Even people I had never met were commenting, "What a snake. She's just as bad as Greg." Another greedy CEO. Jenna looked at me. Jenna, this is bad. I already knew who was behind it. Greg. This was his final play. He couldn't beat me in the boardroom, so he was trying to burn me down from the outside. I didn't call Greg to my office. I went to his tiny, windowless office by the break room. When I walked in, he was leaning back in his chair, looking at his phone, smirking. He already knew why I was there. Me. Take the video down. Greg just chuckled. Greg, what video? I slammed his desk so hard that his coffee spilled. Me. You think this is a game? He leaned forward. Greg, I think it's poetic. I glared at him. Greg, you wanted to humiliate me? Well, guess what? Now everyone thinks you're just as bad as I am. He smirked. Greg, how does it feel? I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I wanted to rip him apart. Instead, I smiled. Me, you really think I came in here without a plan? For the first time, Greg's smile faltered. I pulled out a flash drive and tossed it onto his desk. Me, that's everything. Greg, everything what? Me, every shady deal you ever made. Every fraudulent report. Every email you tried to delete. Every investor you lied to. Greg's face went pale. Because he knew. He knew what was on that drive. And he knew if I sent it to the right people, he was done. Not just fired. Not just broke. Jail. Greg, you wouldn't. I stared at him. Me, take the video down. Greg swallowed. He grabbed his phone and, with shaking hands, deleted the post. I took my phone out and texted Jenna. Me, is it down? She checked. Jenna, it's gone. I nodded. Then I picked up the flash drive and snapped it in half. Greg stared at me, stunned. Greg, why? Why would you do that? I stepped back. Me, because I don't need revenge, Greg. I leaned in. Me, you already lost. The next morning, Greg resigned. No farewell email. No announcement. He just vanished. The investors were relieved. Employees cheered. But the company still had damage to undo. The fake video had left a stain. Some people still believed it. So I did something Greg would never have done. I called a company-wide meeting. And I told them the truth. I told them about Greg's sabotage. About the deepfake. About the lawsuit. Then I opened the floor. Me, if anyone has questions, ask me now. People did. And I answered. No spin. No PR nonsense. Just the truth. By the end of the meeting, I saw a shift. People started trusting me again. And Greg? No one even mentioned his name. It was like he had never existed. A month later, I was sitting in my office, when Jenna walked in with 2 glasses of whiskey. Jenna, to not being Greg. We clinked glasses. I looked around. I had fought for this. Hard. And now? I had a company to run. A company that wasn't just about profits and power trips. A company where people actually wanted to work. And as I took a slow sip of whiskey, I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove myself in Greg's world. But Greg's world was small. Mine? Mine was just beginning.